everyone, how are you doing? I had a very long day today, so technically it's Sunday morning. The time change, it's really thrown me because it's taken away an hour, and I plan to do that baking party today, later. I don't know what time. I'm not sure what time yet. But I have been going over this confession. Now I know I took you through a transcript, and I told you I was going through that transcript verbatim. So there were some issues there with the dog. And if you listen to the actual confession, I see where they messed it up when they put it down in the record. Because he says, asked me the name of my dog, but he was talking as Nikki, and it was missed there by all of them. That's where we had that error. But I'm going to go through, just like I said, I haven't even gone through the whole first part, but I have pages and pages of notes of things that I've already discovered that I have so many questions about. So I'm going to go through that. I'm sure you're going, I know a lot of you are as well. And this is going to be something that's going to be ongoing until I get through all of it. But I have to stop here and see what I have now. Okay, I actually started listening. I don't even know if I started at the beginning here or I went to go listen to where it was up to what happened with Shanann, and I am going to, after I get through this, or maybe even before I do, take his first confession and get it on a video just with the parts that pertain to the murder of Shanann and the girls, and compare the two, because I am not at all convinced those girls were alive when they left the house. There's too many things that are not adding up for me. I've talked to you about some of them already. It's sleepy time tea anyway, but I want to go over some things. So let me see. Let's look at what she did in the beginning. Nikki, okay, she, as I've told you, she did her research on Chris. She knew what he liked. He said she was the one who pursued the relationship. She totally lied when she said she thought he was going through a divorce. Chris says it. She was saving face. She knew he was married. She knew he had children. He says she didn't know she was pregnant, but Tammy comes right out and says, "Come on, Chris, you know that." And he says, "Oh, well, maybe she didn't tell me. Maybe she was waiting for me to tell her." Whatever. So she decided to go take him to the Shelby Museum, right? And then to those drag races where he hadn't been to them in 10 years, right? He'd never been camping, okay? And that's surprising, why Ronnie never took him camping, even in the front yard. But as I've told you before, he didn't even know how to build a fire, which I don't know if they had a wood-burning fireplace in their house, but you would think a campfire outside at least once in your life. I mean, I don't know. I knew how to build a fire for as long as I can remember, and during the summer we always had campfires and things with my friends. We used to go off on this lake that we owned, but we would go off on either, my parents had property, a lot of property besides just our house and everything on the lake, but around the lake, and my friends had, before the fire pit, it was actually like a campfire. So we always did that as kids, and we used to bring potatoes out there, and I mean young, okay, and we could start the fire ourselves. We would sit out there and tell ghost stories, do whatever we wanted, and then I don't understand how he never knew how to build a fire. It is so baffling to me. So it's very baffling to me. I don't really understand. Okay, so that was very baffling. And what else was I going to say? Just that he had never gone camping, even in the backyard or something, right? I don't know. Very strange. living in the country like that. It seemed very strange to me. It wasn't like he grew up in Manhattan or something, you know what I mean? It was very strange. Okay. So then, let's see. He said, she saw his wife on the lock screen of his phone. He showed her pictures of the girls. And according to him, he never told her anything about going through a divorce. And the reason he wasn't wearing his wedding ring, he said, is because he lost a lot of weight. It fell off and it had to be resized. Okay. And he talks about how when he was promoted to being a field operator, when he used to work on the rover, he had more office time. And that office time is what allowed Nikki to approach him, right? To approach him. And he feels that if he had not had that, this wouldn't have happened. And he says something very interesting. Not that he wishes he wouldn't have met her, but that he wishes he would have met her, he still wants it, but that it would have just been a work kind of thing and it wouldn't have evolved from that. But he actually doesn't say he wished he hadn't never met her, which you would expect, That was just a weird thing. Okay. But he said, he is never the guy that he's had women smile on him, but he doesn't approach them, and she was pursuing him. Okay, and that he had many opportunities to get out of this, he felt, and he just didn't take them. Like when Jeremy Lindstrom asked him to go to the Broncos game instead of going to the fake Rockies game, they went to the Lazy Dog, right, instead. And there was another one, he said, I could have told her that I couldn't get a babysitter, and maybe if I went with Jeremy, a light switch would have went off in my head or her head, and this would have taken a different path, okay? But by that point, he had spent every evening in July, and there are some things I just don't get about that. Again, with Chris going through routine, right? He goes through the routine. He doesn't really tell us much about the routine. Even though Tammy asks, he says, I go home, I have dinner, I work out, and I go there. I'm starting to believe that is not the case at all. I'm starting to believe they spent every night at Chris's house. You want to know why? First I was saying it was because he was parking the car down the street, okay? And is parking the car down the street, I said, because he didn't have to fool around with the garage door, get any warnings or anything like that could go to Shanann's thumb, right? But he doesn't talk about Dieter. Coming home, letting Dieter out, feeding Dieter. What was going on? Yes, he could have had him in his crate all day, which is not good for the poor dog, right? Never to go out all day, and then come home. When he come home, let him out, feed him, let him go out in the yard, and then what? Take him in and put him in the crate again. In the morning when he came back, did he go back to the house to get dressed, or did he bring his clothes over there? What was going on? That's what I want to know. It's not buttoned up for me. And he normally really goes through a routine. And then wouldn't that be really, really, really risky? Because as he said on July 4th, and he starts that out, if you're listening to and even Coder asked him to clarify because it doesn't make sense. First he says, she came over my house on July 4th, and that's what she says. She came over his house on July 4th. I think that was when she was working on his macros on his app, right? But then as he goes into it, he says, and this is what makes me think that he changed his mind and made it her house instead of her spending every night at his house, and I'll tell you why. he says she came over on July 4th, and then this is when he's saying he had to talk her down off a ledge, okay? This is right after Coder and Tammy ask. People have asked us, a lot of people have asked us, should we be looking more into Nicole, her involvement in this? And instead of saying, no, he says something like, well, she could blow things out of proportions. I've had to talk her down off a ledge. And they said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, she could get upset very easily over something little. And to that effect, okay, that's not his exact words, but that's his effect. And then that's when he says, she came over the house on July 4th. And then I think as he's saying this, he's thinking, no. And he said, well, yeah, well, I stayed over every night at her place. And I had the day off, so I had fallen asleep. And Shanann had called 10 times. And so she was really pissed. Where were you? Where were you? And he said, and I told, I gotta go home. And she said, are you gonna come back? And I said, no, in case Shanann calls again. And I'm thinking to myself, what is he talking? He just said she came over. And Coder must have said, he said, wait, I'm confused. You're over her house or she's over yours? Oh, I'm over her house. Did you guys catch that? Okay, that's messed up. Now, he says that, then she calls him back and says, I don't know, I don't know. You could tell she was hemming and hawing. And then he said, and then she invites him back after she comes back from a baseball game to go to her house, and he goes. I think it's the opposite. I'm sorry. I think it's the opposite. Think about it. He's already said at other times, if Shanann didn't believe where he was, she would tell him to take a picture of something, okay? So if she thought he wasn't home, or she would tell him to go into a room, or look for something, get something, take a picture of it. Oh, do I have the bottle of medication there? She wouldn't do it like, I don't believe. She would ask him that I need, the label of a medication, and can you go get it? How could he take that risk that she would do that? Nicole's house wasn't around the block, right? Could he take that risk? An entire month? No. And when was he going to go there? He had a FaceTime with the kids every night, remember? He had a FaceTime every single night with them. And you say, okay, she puts them in bed early. Okay, I gotcha. And they're in North Carolina, and they're 2 hours ahead. So yeah, he could go home, work out. He didn't mention the FaceTime with Shanann, right? He didn't even mention that when he said this. The FaceTime with Shanann and the kids. He could work out, have his FaceTime, but what if she wanted to call him later on in the evening? What if she wanted to call him around 9, 10 o'clock her time? I don't see, and is he just going to run outside of Nikki's and then just, I don't know. I really think if it wasn't every night at that house, there were more nights at that house than he's saying, okay? It would be way, way, way too risky. And I want to go back and look at her calls and text from that time, and what she said to her friends about certain times that he rushed her off the phone. Well, now we know why he was rushing her off the phone, right? And he was working out, and he didn't have time to talk, and he wanted to go for a run, or whatever it was, right? They were all excuses. But I think he was at his house with her way more, and I think it all has stuff to do with parking cars and all of that good stuff. So he said the situation controlled him. He said he was on a roller coaster he couldn't get off of, is what it felt like. Bring us back to Shanann. Okay. I heard her get in around 2 a.m. Then he says, I don't know if her flight was really delayed or if she was just sitting around with Nicole talking. Now, I wonder, like I told you the last time, is it his parents that are putting this idea in his head? okay? Is it? Because it's a very easy thing to check, right? If her flight was really delayed, okay? It's not some big mystery. And they said, no, her flight was delayed. But, okay. Who's putting the idea in his head? As I mentioned to you, if Nikki was at the house, if they were waiting to do something, and she was supposed to be home at 11 or 12, and now when is she coming home? Oh my gosh, how are we going to go to work tomorrow? We're not going to get this done. I can't believe this. I bet you her plane isn't even delayed. I bet you she's staying with that girl. She's probably talking to her because, oh, blah, blah, blah. Or after the fact, because he said, his parents said that they were going through text, I guess, in the discovery, and that she was telling all the girls about this, and they were giving her advice, blah, 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 blah. Whatever it was, but maybe that's why Nikki was so upset at Nicole for going to the house. What's with this chick? Remember she kept doing that? Okay. He feels her coming in the bed, stirring around. She puts her hands on his chest or his leg, and they have sex. But later on, Tammy says, did she take her shirt off, her bra off? No. Is that unusual? Sometimes, I don't know. He was clearly not telling the truth. Okay, I'm sorry, he wasn't. And what I really disliked is they didn't let him talk. I wanted to put my hand over their mouths. They gave him the answers to sentences. They filled in his words. Let him speak. Because his reaching and not knowing what's coming next was telling us he was lying. And here you are offering multiple choice endings for his sentences. Cool it, guys. I really like Tammy and Graham, but they really ticked me off in a lot of this stuff. Dave was pretty quiet, but they were jumping in and finishing his sentences more times than I can count. And I was just like, I wanted to kick both of them so hard under the table and let him finish. And I'm so upset with that. I really am. So I really feel that this whole interview, a lot of it is lies, but a lot of it, it's almost like the night of that confession, the first one. A lot of it is their words in here. They gave him a storyline. They gave it to him when he's talking about putting the kids in the car. They did it multiple times, and I was so freaking upset. Okay? And I'll go through it. I really was. Okay. So he said she got home, they have sex, right? And then they fall asleep. And, you know, he says it was more like test sex, okay? And then the whole part about the talk in the morning, I don't know if you guys caught it. I don't know if you caught it. First he said he was in the bed next to her. He didn't say on top of her. Then he mentions getting on top of her, straddling her, having this conversation. Then, as he talks about this conversation, and he can't remember parts of it, and was it here and was it there? And later on he tells us what a terrific memory he has, and we know he has a terrific memory, and he remembers every step and every detail of everything he does. He's not the kind of guy that says, I gave my kids a bath. He lists every step of that bath. I went upstairs, I put the drain down, I turned on the tub, I adjusted the water, I put the bubble bath in, I got the kids undressed, I put the kids in the tub, I let them stay in the tub about 20 minutes. Every single step, from the whole bedtime routine, put the noise machines on. He knows his routine. He knows it backwards and forwards, and he will repeat the same thing exactly the same way because he memorizes it. He's told us that he can memorize the scripture. He memorizes everything. But it's funny that the one thing that he says Shanann was saying, and probably one of the most, right, the most well known for people that don't even know the Bible inside and out, Christians, is what Jesus said. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And he says something about, forgive these people, and I have to go. And then he messes up he says something like, he doesn't say, they don't know what they're not doing, or something. The end part of it is so messed up too. And you could look at these people. Did it mean that more than one? Would he say that? Wouldn't he say forgive him if he's talking about him, if that's the prayer she was doing? Why would she say these people if that's, Okay. Now I know it's Father, forgive them, but he didn't choose to say it like that. So anyway, I don't know. That was very strange for me. Okay. So let's go back to that, okay? They keep taking him away from the moment. So while he's talking about this, as soon as he says that she said, I'm gonna leave you or something, you're not gonna see the kids again, you'll never see the kids again, get off me, you're hurting the baby. Instead of letting him finish, they take him off and they say, has she ever said that to you? Has she ever gotten upset like that? And he brings it back to something in North Carolina before they had kids, when someone was texting him, a woman, and Shanann said something about it because they asked if she ever snapped. And this is so crazy, okay? They asked him if he's ever angry. No, I've never been angry in my whole life. That's a lie. Let's listen to what he says here. He says, somebody was texting me, some woman I knew, and so what was it? I can't have a friend that's a girl? And he sounded right there. He sounded pretty, you could see a nasty undertone there. And he said, and he slammed the door. And he said Shanann got upset. He doesn't tell us what she said, not one word. He doesn't tell us she slammed a door. He doesn't tell us anything. He just says that she said, don't let it happen again. Don't let what happen again? The texting? The slamming of the door? His yelling? What was it? Don't let it happen again. Okay. Did she ever pick up a knife? Did she ever threaten you? No. Did she ever snap at you? Oh, not really. But he says, if something irked her, she would react to that. But says she didn't snap at him. But she had her mother's Italian temperament, okay? And he was more like Frank. And when they asked him to compare their marriage to his parents, he immediately goes to Sandy and Frank, who have a very good relationship. The investigator said because Frank lets Sandy be Sandy and she lets Frank be Frank. And he said, yes, I never tried to change Shanann. It worked fine. He said in her other marriage, she had a husband that was very controlling, and she had a husband that was a Sandy. And so Shanann ended up being like me, meaning Chris. And the husband controlled everything and it didn't work. Okay. So that was that. Now they take him, well, let's go back. So when he goes back to the story, he kind of leaves out that you're not going to see the kids again. And so Tammy or Coder, I can't remember which one, says, is that when she says you're not going to see the kids again? Oh no, she said that before. She said that before when? Before she left for Arizona. Before she left for Arizona? Yeah. So now you're confused. Is he talking about, is that when she said that? Did she say that before? Did she ever say that? It's like so jumbled in here, okay? So now he's making it sound like there was this episode before she left for Arizona where they had a fight and she said that he was not going to see the kids again. And then now they take it again. Would she have to move out of Colorado? Yes, she would. It's too expensive. She would probably move out of the area. Okay. And they go on that for a little bit. And we go back. And when he's going back, he's all confused on the position that he is, okay? Whether he's still straddling her or he's not. It's a mess. And I think it's such a mess because it didn't happen like this. Okay? That's what I think. And they're maybe intentionally confusing him, and it could be that, to see if it's the truth and he'll come right back to where he was, or if he'll get all messed up, right? Could be that. Could be a tactic. I'm telling you, it would drive the crap out of me. Maybe that's why everybody told me I should be a prosecutor, I should be an interrogator, and I should be an investigator. All of my life. My mother used to say, you should be a prosecutor because they'll jump off the stand and say I'm guilty to get away from your cross-examination. But, yeah, because I would hammer this down. Okay? I mean, I'd be waiting. Let's bring it back. I do not understand here. Where are we going with this? What are we talking about? When are you talking about Arizona now? Did it happen today? Did she say that today, or did it happen before she went for Arizona? Well, what's going on here? I'm nuts. And I think that's the thing. She might have said it before she left for Arizona. Okay? She might have said it. And I don't think it happened that day because I don't think there was any conversation. Okay? That's what I think. But, so let's just go back to what he's saying here. So, they go back to that conversation, and he says, it starts out that they have sex, more like a test. They talked in the morning, it's not working, whatever. She says, what about last night? He said he couldn't say what's going on. He couldn't tell her. It was the straw that broke the camel's back, using that credit card. But he had to use that credit card. He couldn't ask Nikki to pay. He didn't know what to do. Coder says, did you do it on purpose? Did you do it on purpose? No, I didn't know what else to do. He never knows what else to do a lot of the time, right? And so this part is just so mumbled. Now, I have questions. He says he didn't have any more gift cards. Do you remember him being on a gift card website? I do. He said he was getting the gift cards from Being Safe and Anadarko, right? But he was on a gift card website, and I believe that was in early July. I think Chris is not telling us the full, honest, and whole truth here, is he? Doesn't seem that way. It seems like he was purchasing gift cards, or what was he doing on the gift card site? And how would he be purchasing those gift cards is what I wonder. Because wouldn't Shanann see payment to buy a gift card? Was he perhaps telling her that he was buying a gift card for someone at work? Maybe it was someone's birthday, a friend. Did he tell her things like that? Did he tell her that, what else could he could, hey, my friend Dave Cologne's, he's having a party, I'm just going to go on and get him a $50 gift card. What was he doing on that gift card site, and how did he pay for it? Okay, so now he lied about the Rockies game, right? Reading scripture. Okay, that's when he said there's so many things he could have done. There's so many things, so many chances to get off of that. When he talks about Shanann and says she doesn't snap at him, and then he goes, but sometimes he said, does she go 0 to 1? She goes 0 to 200, and then sometimes, he describes her as going off, woo-hoo, like that, like woo-hoo is what he does, something like that, okay? But then brings it back to say that's what made her really good at her job, because she's, she can go after what she wants, and she's focused, and she was so good in she knew accounting skills like the back of her hand, and her sales skills, and she's wonderful with that, and that's why Thrive was so good, and they talk a little bit about that. And then they go back to that night again, that morning, and they say, so was this a totally different kind of fight? Oh, a totally different kind of fight, he says. Now, he says there was emotion at first. Now, this is where you see that Chris doesn't understand what emotion is. But then it turned to just anger, no love. Chris, anger is an emotion. Anger is an emotion. I think Chris needs to see that Disney movie, with the emotions, and I'm not joking around, because there is anger, sadness, right? I had to do a blog post for that, and it was weird. I did a play on words because we built a bin, and I said I built a bin to put my anger and I forget which emotions we did to contain my anger and my sadness. Anyway, that's another story, but he really needs help in the emotions, right? Because he doesn't think anger is an emotion, obviously. So then he says, and some of you have pointed this out to me, but I think he's talking about him and Shanann. He goes, what we were saying, what she was saying, he says we. But I think he's slipping up here because this didn't happen, guys. Okay, so he's thinking what we were saying, me and Shanann and I, right? But it didn't happen. So he's filling in the blanks and in his mind, right? He's making up this story. And then they're helping him along, which I have to kick them. So he says, there was more anger from him and more desperation from her. And that, he said at first they were talking about selling the house and moving to Brighton and canceling the Aspen trip, right? Moving to Brighton to get away from there, and then working up to it, they're not compatible, maybe this isn't gonna work, and then Shanann getting upset and saying, get off me, you're not gonna see the kids again, you're hurting the baby. Okay, and then him putting his hands around her neck and saying that he doesn't remember. It was like he was not in control of anything. It was like someone had their hands on his, and he doesn't know what happened. And he said, the prosecutor said it takes 2 to 4 minutes. He's not even acting like he did this because the prosecutor said it takes 2 to 4 minutes. I could have taken my hands off of her. Well, did it feel like 2 to 4 minutes? I think he said I felt like longer. I could have taken my hands off, but I didn't. And then he doesn't say she's dead. He says, when Shanann was gone, then he gets the sheet, starts wrapping her up. Bella comes in with a blanket. I believe he says it first, or he doesn't say it at first, says it later. She says, what's wrong with Mommy? He says, Mommy's sick. She's going to be okay. Bella doesn't touch her. Bella thinks she's sleeping. And then he starts bringing her down the stairs, but he loses his grip, so he starts kind of dragging her, and her feet are hitting the steps, okay? And that must have woke Cece up. And so he wants us to believe that these two little girls are up and running around while he's dragging their mother out of the house in this sheet. And they're telling him about the amount of movement that's going on at I think it was 426, and that I think somebody said I'd taken 40,000 steps. Now that's something that, okay, my watch, one night, I was scrubbing something like this, you know, take like pre-treating something, and my watch, even though this is my dominant hand that I wear it on, and it's programmed in here, I'll log down a heck of a lot of steps. Now I'm thinking about that movement. Was he cleaning something? Was it his arms, what he was doing? What was it? Could it have been something else than him taking 40,000 steps? But it also said he went up multiple flights of stairs, right? So we know there was a flurry of activity. But the kids would have set up a flurry of activity as well with the motion detectors, but his watch would have been his own. He doesn't talk about getting the kids snacks. He doesn't talk about them asking for drinks. He doesn't talk about anything. And I know some of you will say, oh, they were upset. No. Even so, 3-year-olds can ask for something. They can quickly forget. Their minds can go like this. Even in traumatic things, you know, I want a drink. They don't fully absorb that if daddy says mommy's just sick, I'm putting her in the car, you know, but I want a drink. I want a snack, right? Whatever. He doesn't talk about getting them dressed, putting shoes on them. He doesn't talk about really getting them in the car. And then he says, when he's talking to Tammy later on, no, the kids got into the car. That's what he said. He didn't say I put the kids in the car. He didn't say I carried the kids to the car. He said the kids got into the car. Very odd. Very odd. The whole thing is so very odd. And Coder says again, is there any reason you would want me to think the kids were alive when they left the house? No, but then he keeps asking them what they saw in the video. And then very telling towards the, when he's talking about why he took the plea deal. Well, you know, Honest Abe didn't want to put his lawyers through getting surprised because he figured the prosecution probably had things that he didn't even know yet. Now, when he says this, they don't say anything, but what it means to me is that he thought the prosecution had things that made his story a total freaking lie. So what would those things be? Could it have been the doorbell camera? Could it have been something from Nate's camera? He said he told this version of the stories to the lawyers. So, is that the video that he asked Tammy about what she saw because he knew the kids were not alive? He doesn't mention putting the trash bags on Shanann. He doesn't mention the trash bags being on Shanann. I wish they would have pressed him a little bit more. The first interview, when he was talking about carrying the children out. What were the children wrapped in? I have to go back and see if he tells us. They ask him about the sheet. I believe they ask him about the garbage bags as well, but he doesn't mention putting the garbage bags on Shanann. He doesn't mention it now. He doesn't mention it until they tell him. What about the garbage bags? Did they test these garbage bags for DNA inside them? If not, why? Why not? Why not? They should be. If they have the kid's DNA inside them, we know his story is a lie. So, what would they have had? If he was telling the truth, he wouldn't be worried about the video. If he was telling the truth, he wouldn't ask Tammy something about the video. He wouldn't be at all concerned if he was telling the truth. He's not telling the truth. That's what I feel. He's not telling the truth. Okay? All right, let's see what else I have here. When he's talking in North Carolina, he talks about Nutgate. Very obvious. He's being told whatever's going on social media. He's being told that these podcasts are being made, these video casts about Nutgate, that, just are there slamming Shanann on these, even though Shanann's not here to tell her story. We have her texts that his parents don't know if they can forgive her. Ever, he says. Ever. Because of this. Yet the Rzuceks. The Rzuceks, who lost their daughter and granddaughters to Chris's hands, tell him they still love him. But his parents don't know if they can ever forgive Shanann for the Nutgate. He admits that his mother didn't take the allergy seriously, that she just thought, allergies? What's the worst that's going to happen? She's going to get a little rash? Big deal. He admits that. He also admits to calling his mother and telling her that she can't do what she did. But yeah, now suddenly, because they're putting the nephew in this, okay, which I can tell you 9 times out of 10 is a total ploy from either Cindy or Jamie to make the situation more desperate. That poor Bella had to hide behind a curtain. His nephew told her to hide behind a curtain. Your mother's never going to let you come here again. Okay? But they couldn't go to Cece's birthday party because Shanann posted on Facebook something about this nut incident. And she didn't post it on Facebook. She posted it in an allergy group. She did. I've seen the post. Okay, it made its way onto I forget which site it was, Reddit or Web Sleuths. Yeah, it was posted to a private group, and it didn't name Cindy. And he said it wasn't directed at her what she posted, but And then of course Tammy fills it in. Oh, but they could just figure it out. Yeah. Okay, so they're not going to go, even though they were invited. So they can't put that behind them and go see their granddaughter. And they really didn't want to see their granddaughter too much, right? You connect the dots there, okay? So then he mentions this beach trip that they had planned for 5 days, and he said that I believe it was the parents were supposed to go with them, and then he says Shanann told me not to call them, that I couldn't go there, but then she said go call them, go work out what's in your head. And then he ends up spending that last day with him. They're starting to ask him, do your parents know about this affair? And he hems and he haws about this whole thing. And he says, well, they know I was texting someone while I was there. And they come, he's lying, okay? He's lying. He's like, knew between the, they knew, okay? And he doesn't fess up to the whole divorce thing that Cindy said. Remember that she was calling Mark and then he says stuff about Mark that Mark didn't say in his interview, okay, about Shanann. So did those words from Mark come from Cindy? Because they certainly didn't come from what Mark said to the detectives. And wouldn't Mark say that if that was the case, wouldn't that help his buddy out if it truly was the case? When Mark stated again and again he had never seen anything when he was with Shanann, and everything about Shanann he learned through Cindy. Okay. So let's see. He said his dad is cool. His sister and his mother have never liked Shanann. They've always been combative with Shanann. He explains that the mother, like, I didn't have this, why does she get that? I didn't get that, why didn't she get that? Why didn't she get this? Sounds like a very jealous, very toxic relationship. They didn't go to the wedding. We know he danced his first dance with his grandmother and Mark's mother. We know that he was a very kind of a loner child, had 2 or 3 close friends, didn't want to be in any cliques, didn't want to be in any groups. He went and sat by some fish pond at school while his sister was a lot of friends, very popular, and leaving, running away, whatever she was doing, away, coming back to the house, and staying, I guess, in the area. I believe she was married, divorced, remarried, and okay, so bit of a rebel, I've heard through other interviews. Mentions the beach. This is, remember these words. Did Shanann book it as punishment? A beach vacation. Yeah, I booked it as punishment, Chris. Well, that had to come from Cindy, because that's how, remember, she's gonna punish you. I don't think she's really missing. She's punishing you, Chris. She's punishing you. Okay, so now you've got to just have that tape playing over and over and over and over. I think she booked that beach vacation to punish you, Chris. She didn't want you to see us, even though they were supposed to go to the beach, and his parents did go to the beach, just not here. Back to Shanann. He said he always goes back to saying what someone else said when he talks about it. First he said what the prosecutor said about it taking 2 to 4 minutes, right? Well, now he says his attorney said it's strangling someone is a crime of passion, but I don't see how that can be passionate. And then, Tammy said, well, it's with your hands and not with a weapon, and then he says, well, when Shanann was gone, he can't say dead, or when I killed Shanann, after I killed Shanann, something like that. I can't say that, so when she was gone. It was a traumatic event. I was shaking. I didn't know what to do. I was not in control. People say, why didn't I call 911? But see, he's got that call 911. People were saying that when he supposedly said Shanann murdered the children, he found the children. Remember, why didn't you call 911? That's when they said, why don't you call 911? They weren't saying this in this scenario. Now, is someone saying, why didn't you call 911 after you murdered your wife? That's strange. Wouldn't it, somebody say, why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you call the police? Or do they think, why didn't you call 911 after you killed her? And then they're going to bring her back to life. I'm not sure where that is going there. Because I think the why didn't you call 911 happened with the first version of the story. And he's got everything really mixed up here and very mumbo jumbo, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Instead of saying, people are saying, why did you kill your wife? Why didn't you call 911? Okay, whatever, this is what he says. He says, but you don't know what you would do. You'd being a Monday morning quarterback, okay? Bella came in, she walked in. Okay, she saw Shanann in the sheet. And then he says he carried her downstairs and into the truck. Okay? It was hard for him to talk. He said, my kids, my babies, I talk to them every night. I don't see how this could have happened. He doesn't see, he's in denial. I don't see how this could have happened, right? Being a dad was the best part of my life. And I took it all away. But something else was controlling me. I couldn't fight back. It's what the prosecutors say. Oh, when the prosecutor said about Bella biting her tongue and all of that, I wanted to bang my head on the wall. And then Tammy starts leading about putting things in the truck. And she asks him about the stuff, and he's not even sure at this point if the kids had the blankets. Now listen to me. Okay, this is where the story gets whacked. She asks him if the kids had the blankets. He can't remember. Now, if he, as he's going to tell us, murders his children with Cece's Yankee blanket, would he not know that that blanket was in the truck? This is what I mean. I think he is making this up as he went along. And if that is Cece's favorite blanket, wouldn't he even remember it was in the truck? Because I think before he said he carried them out in it. He couldn't remember what toys they had. Tammy was leading with all of this. Didn't they have a dog that, yeah, did they have a blanket? He said, yeah, they had a blanket. I can't remember if it's a big or small one. What? If he's just going to tell us in 2 minutes that he used Cece's Yankee blanket to strangle these children and suffocate them. How would he not remember this? None of you find this troubling? That he doesn't know and they're leading him? Let him talk. Because none of this makes sense. And my husband even said, the little kids are not going to sit on a seat with their feet on their mother. That is so ridiculous to think that. I don't know. I feel the same. So he says, she said, what about the blanket? He said, I don't know if it's a small blanket. And then they were leading him all the way. If it's a big blanket, if it was a small blanket. Okay? She asked about the gas can. And I again was so angry that they just went ahead filling in the blanks for him, and they should have let him speak. Honestly, he said, maybe I was going to take my whole self out. I don't feel like I deserve to live. And then he talks about thinking about that. See, he's talking about, I know a lot of you have said, well, doesn't it mean the girls were definitely alive? Because he's thinking about it. He's saying, couldn't I have saved my girls? Oh, that they were definitely, excuse me. A lot of you are saying, well, it proves the girls were dead because he says he's driving along thinking about why couldn't I save my girls? No, he's talking about now in prison. He's not very clear in how he speaks, but and thinking, how could I have saved my girls? And then he says, you know, dads are not supposed to do this. I've read books where dads don't do these types of things or hurt kids. And somebody said, what kind of books could you read? And I think he's talking about children's books. I do. I think he's talking about children's books, you know, the ones that are about fathers and my daddy helps me tie my shoes. My daddy helps me do this. So Chris, remember, seems my husband thinks he's putting it on, that he's so immature and so childlike. But he's probably remembering those types of books. And no, I've never picked up a book and read, and then my daddy did a very bad thing. He hasn't read this book, right? My daddy did a bad thing. Okay? So I think that's where he's getting, dads are not supposed to do bad things. He's read books. Because somebody was asking in the comments, who needs to read a book like that? And one of my friends and fellow creators says, well, someone that doesn't have any empathy. But I think he's talking about children's books, either that or parenting books. You know, nowhere in the parenting book does it say that, you know. You have the gas can. What were you going to do? I think I'm going to take myself out too. But then I thought, you know, I don't deserve to live, but I know that could cause a bigger problem, and that could make more people get hurt and stuff. So I just, you know, decided against that. But did he truly decide against it? Was he perhaps going to set that fire, leaving work, when he left work? He got called away from work early, remember? You remember? Yes. Did he just not get time to do it? Okay. So when you listen to him tell the story of what happened to the girls, it doesn't make sense. He doesn't tell us how he put them in the car. He says they got in the car. He says, we don't hear seatbelts. They're sitting, where are they sitting? They're sitting in the back. They're either laying in each other's laps or it doesn't mention the seatbelt. Doesn't mention much about that. Does it mention that if they didn't have seatbelts, that Cece was climbing up on the chair? Nothing. We don't hear anything about that on an almost, 50-minute ride out there? We hear nothing about it. Nothing. When they get out there, he says that he takes Shanann and he puts her on the ground towards where he's going to bury her. Let's think about, and I'll see if I can put in the clip of the Survey 319. Where Shanann is buried is quite a distance from the oil tanks. Are we supposed to believe that he parked that truck there, put Shanann out, murdered the children one at a time, first Cece, carries her all the way across a field where, what was he going to do if one of his coworkers came in and he was midway across that field? What was he going to do if someone else came in? That's an awfully long way to walk. There and back, there and back, when he has to get this done in a hurry. But we don't hear about him pulling the truck over there. At least I haven't to this point. So I'm really wondering about that. Because if he didn't move the truck over there, that's a tremendous amount of time. It's a tremendous amount of time to leave Bella. Okay? Now, it was said she was taking off the seatbelt. I forget where I heard that, if it was Dr. Phil or what. Look. Even the way he describes smothering, strangling them, okay, doesn't make sense. He makes it sound they were sitting upright, puts a blanket over, pushes her, and does that against. That's a very awkward position, isn't it? Because he's got a what? He doesn't even talk about how he gets into the back seat. So what is he? Is he sitting where on the part of the back seat and doing it like this? What is he doing? It seems, it's not believable. It's not believable. Did he lay her down on the seat? But he doesn't say that. He doesn't say that. Okay? And then the Yankee blanket comes in. Okay. He says, I walked them up to the, yeah, let me see. Did he say that again? I'm trying to, because that was in the summary. Let's see here. I went back to the tanks again. Okay, so on the way over, he was nervous, he was shaking. Thinking his life is completely changed. He pictures the ride now, and what could he have done to save his daughter's life? The oil tanks make no sense, and actually he feels sick to his stomach when he thinks about the oil tanks. Okay, he said he took Shanann out, and then Cece was first. He did have her blanket, the Yankee blanket, and they asked, was it a mercy killing? Why are they doing this? And that Bella was next to her, and she didn't say anything, and he can still remember when Bella said, Daddy, no, he hears it every day. So he feels sorry, but that doesn't take it back. They ask him if it's the mercy killing. He said it felt more like anger with Shanann, and he was taking it out on them. And they said, anger? About what? And he said, nothing that makes anyone do this. Oh, he said, nothing that makes any sense to do this. Okay, so he says it was anger toward Shanann, but he couldn't say for what. And he was taking it out on them, but it didn't make any sense. Not any sense for anyone to do something like this. And now he sits in here and thinks of what he could have had. He could have had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 1-month-old son. But now it's just him. When he talked about, on the way with the gas can, wanting to kill, he didn't have any weapons, he said, so he couldn't have taken himself out another way, You didn't have any weapons, Chris, and you managed to kill 4 people. You didn't have any weapons. He could have got a rope and hung himself. He didn't need a weapon. He could have done it with a belt, right, if he wanted to hang himself. Just all empty words. But, he has a purpose, and now, maybe he can help others. It's too bad other people had to suffer, lose their lives. That's what he says. He talks about the allergies and talking to his mother and having Bella at the birthday party. So whereas his mother said she just has to learn, she can't have anything, it sounds from what he says, Bella really wanted the cake, but he told Bella she can't have the cake because Cece can't have the cake, and he took them off and gave them both an ice pop. And Coder says there's just so many things because they're going back to that allergy. He says, yeah, it's like someone stirring the pot. Someone was stirring the pot. Oh, this was telling. They go back to that day again because they keep going back to it. He says something told him that he just felt like the kids wouldn't be there when he got home, meaning that Monday, okay? He said they just wouldn't be there. And they said, what do you mean they wouldn't be there? I don't know, I thought maybe she'd take them, or she'd lock me out of the house, or I wouldn't come home. Okay. And then he says, I wouldn't want to make a scene, pounding on the door and stuff to come home. See, he's so upset about making a scene. I wouldn't want to make a scene pounding on the door, but he kills his family. But he doesn't want to kill himself because that could hurt other people. It's such a jumbled mess. So he says, but he really felt what he did on Saturday was the last straw, the credit card. And there is that last straw that will be throughout this, last straw, and it was also in his first confession. The last straw, the straw that broke the camel's back, that's the one. So we have to think about straw, but in the first confession, it was the straw that broke the camel's back that he didn't call 911. So he just felt it was the last straw, not using that credit card. And he just couldn't tell her how he was feeling, not really. And he knows that anything new feels better, but Nikki was different, and with her he was more like himself, and all of that he goes through, okay? But he said that he wasn't home so he didn't have time to look around at things. When he's home sleeping in his own bed, he just didn't know. He didn't have any concept of that anymore. So he's saying when he was sleeping in his own bed there with Shanann, he had been, again, I don't know how true it is, whether they were sleeping in the basement because there were no pictures of the kids around, okay, which I think is what happened. But anyway, he had no reminders. He didn't know who he was. He was going home, even if he was at Nikki's, wasn't he going home to that house every single day, he said, before he went to her house? Didn't he FaceTime with his kids and his wife every single day? Were those not reminders? He sounds like he stutters when he says, I started to feel things on Saturday, when he talks about that credit card, okay? And I think he does mean Sunday too, because she was probably like, this is our last day together. If you don't take care of this, if you don't fix this, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to have her here anymore. And you spending your time, you better make up your mind, you better fix this, whatever, right? We talked about the pregnancy video, and I know some of you also said this. He said the pregnancy video came a few days after he met, and started, I guess, engaging in conversation with Nikki. And he said it might have been that he was feeling guilty about that, and that tempered his joy in that video. And then he says to Tammy, did you see mine when I found out about Cece? Oh, that was really different. Yeah, we had the crib and we had an eviction notice on it, and he's going on and on and on about that. Okay, here's something interesting. They say, but you did have fights before because your neighbor, right away, he says, oh, but that was embellished, and he retracted that. You can hear a little bit of a change in Chris's tone when he says this, okay? You can hear it. there's an undercurrent to it. He says, oh, but yes, he embellished that and he retracted it. He didn't say what neighbor said this, because there was even another neighbor. Remember, there was another neighbor that saw some type of something between the two of them in a driveway. Okay, right away he knew who he was talking about. So he either heard this through his parents, through the attorney, through Nate, through his neighbor going on Dr. Oz and saying it. What was the deal there? He missed not one beat. He didn't say my neighbor, what neighbor, what fight. He got an undertone to it, and he says yes, it was embellished, and yes, he retracted that. They asked if she belittled him, and he said, I mean, you know, when you have a dominant person, that dominant person takes control. But you know, I can't really think of it. I mean, I always knew if people came over, I knew my role. See, and I think that's it. He knew his role. Chris, you're going to handle the barbecue for this. Chris, this is what you're going to do. Chris, this is what you're going to do. That's what he knows, just like he knew his role at work. He needed that. He must have that. He must have that. So he said he didn't feel like she was belittling him. He knew his role. She was the more dominant person in the relationship, and he was the more laid back. Okay? He went go with the flow kind of guy. He didn't mention anything that NK had mentioned, all those horrible things that she mentioned in her interviews, right? Right. She asked him about the videos, and we went over this, and he said, you know, I did those videos because that was to help our family. I wasn't going to tell her no, because then she was going to say, well, what's the matter, Chris? You don't want to help our family. They asked about her income. He said she made as much as I did, and the car, and she did very well. So back to the kids. The kids were alive, and they got in the truck. They got in the truck. Remember that wording. About whether his marriage was more like his parents. His father was laid back, like him, and Cindy was more aggressive. But he doesn't compare Cindy to Shanann, I think, because the emotional component is missing. Okay, the affection, the love, the very strong emotions of Shanann and the Rzuceks. Okay, that seems to be missing. And where Cindy is aggressive, she's also not. Like he mentioned, the parents didn't cry when they went to Colorado, and the whole Rzucek family crying, very emotional, with big hearts, stuff like that. We've heard Frank talk about that too, about the differences. Okay, so he goes right away to, I think, no, Sandy said that Shanann should marry a man like her father, and so he goes, I think I was kind of like Frank, and she was like her mother, and one day something happened to Shanann's car, and Frank was fixing it, and he helped Frank, and he said, I think Frank liked me because he said any other guy she was with would just watch me fix it. So he went, towards the Rzuceks about that. Now, talks about his parents trying to get him to use, the complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or something else to get out of this. He said he never thought he'd be in jail for the rest of his life, but that doesn't fit, and that doesn't explain it. And he told his parents multiple times that I took the guilty plea because for a reason, I did that. And he doesn't want people to bash Shanann or her family, and he wants people to know she was a beautiful, loving woman that always helped everyone. Ask him about the death penalty. He says, well, sitting in my cell, I kind of thought, and then he just goes on to the other inmates telling him how to kill himself, and maybe thinking of doing that, but then, maybe there's another purpose. And then he was praying, and he was moved away from there. And he got really nervous on the ride over there because they took him to, I believe it was called Sterling, to use the bathroom. Something is another correctional facility, but I guess a pretty bad one. And he said, I heard so many things about that. I got really, really scared. And then he said, then we went on, let's see. He says that Cindy loses it on the phone more, and Ronnie tells her not to do that because then Chris will go back in the cell and think about that. And he says, yeah, that's true, that's what happens. And they talked about books that he read there and read before he came here, like Body of Evidence and some other books. He also said, they asked him about letters, and he said, he throws away the bad letters, he reads the good letters. He doesn't write anybody back on the first time, but some people write him multiple times, and sometimes he writes them back. He says the press sometimes asks him for interviews or whatever, but the prison won't allow it. And they asked him if he wanted to write a book, and he said no. And they asked him, do you want to tell your parents the story? And he said, yeah, they wanted to come out in April, and I told them May, and then I told them June because it's it's still always so very cold here. And what is it, May, June, and then he mentions about the toolbox. Now, did they sell the toolbox for their trip in May or June? That's what it sounds like. And then they talk to him, and he says something when he's writing the journal and he's memorizing the scripture because he's so good at memorization. We know he is at remembering things. Mom and Dad say you should put your journal, you should write down, essentially your story. That's when they asked him about the book, and he says he has a crazy imagination. He once convinced a teacher. He went on a trip to China. He totally convinced her. And at that time, she says, well, why would you do such a thing like that? And he says, well, it was just kind of like, what would you do on your summer? So, yeah, then Honest Abe embellishes this whole thing about China. I guess his summer must not have been very interesting, but he actually made her believe this, and then she told the parents at the back to school meet the teacher night what was going on. So they said, oh yeah, you're a real smart dude, right? You can do that. Now, again, whether they're not letting Tammy let on a little bit, like, why would you do that? Like, are you creative, or are you trying to, why wouldn't you guys let him finish, let him create this story? Stop giving him hints. He talks about how he plays basketball 5 days a week. There's weights, there's rowing machines, and then I guess guys from the infirmary that are in wheelchairs and things go out with him. He doesn't seem afraid. He says with the guys he's with now, there's 10 or 11 wherever he is, and first time he was out there eating with them, he thought, someone gonna stab me or something, but he feels very comfortable now. But he doesn't understand, this thing from Dr. Phil has just come out. Now, this new confession has just come out. My husband's like, he's not gonna last. If he's playing basketball with guys, the very least they're gonna be knocking him down or whatever, whatever. Oh, he really can't go to school here. They only have a sex offender class where he is. They ask him if he's going to be moving from there. He doesn't know. He says that he's helping a woman that's writing to him and to be more spiritual. And Tammy's like, she's writing to you for spirituality advice? Okay. And she just says, hey, easy. I don't know what that is about. Let's see here. And then he says, like on the Poly, this just flew by. They were going to lunch at this point. They asked what are the things that he did to set the scene, and remember, I said he would take the phone and the watch to the field if he planned it, but then he mentions that he left the ring on the counter and the therapy book in the trash, right? Food that he misses, Bojangles chicken and biscuits, the barbecue in Colorado, I guess Shanann's cooking, or spaghetti sauce or fried pizza. He said people know who he is there, but he keeps a low profile. There's guys there that were in gangs and they're snitches or they're sex offenders. There's other cops in there that things have happened, he said. He's able to stay out of trouble and he doesn't have to walk around with cuffs or shackles. And a couple of guys got in trouble for having a cell phone, which is contraband, and they cuff him, they bring you to the hole. And then if you get in trouble, I don't know, 2 times you get out of that facility. He had his mental tests and says he has an IQ of 140, maybe 135. he says when he's talking about NK, he said she was coming to his house, then when she got all upset when he said he had to talk her down, she was going to this site about mistresses, would you marry your mistress? And she told her friend Brittany about it. Now, he says Brittany, I don't know if he's substituting Brittany for Charlotte and he just has the name wrong, or he's intentionally giving the name wrong. I don't know. He says he never knew if she wanted kids, but yet then again she wanted to give him a son. Tammy asked about the pregnancy announcement, if it was on Facebook, Chris, and he said, well, if she saw it, she never told me, went through this, you know. That is a lot for right now to discuss. Those are, I know there's like 9,000. They asked him, Chris, did you tell us the story because you feel bad for Shanann's memory? Think about it, any rage, and he says no. Do you think about any rage in the past? Because people are saying, you wait, you're going to find out this guy has a really bad past. He killed animals, he did this, he did that. He said, no, I don't remember anything like that. In fact, I had a fight once in the 3rd grade, and we ripped each other's shirts and went home crying. Now, about Ronnie, he said that when he left home, Ronnie was smoking cigarettes like crazy, and you know, he couldn't get his dad to quit those, and then eventually he did stop the cigarettes, but then when Chris left home, he started with this white powdery stuff that Chris couldn't say was cocaine, or couldn't say, but that his mother and his sister told him that he was spending money like crazy. The mother thought he was having an affair. They found CDs where he was cutting this stuff, and he was losing weight, and his nose was bleeding. And they talked to him, and he would always change the subject, and Chris talked to him and got him, you know, he would change the subject, and Chris said, you have to stop doing this, you have to stop doing this. And then they just act like miraculously it was stopped, but we don't know what happened there. Anyway, I still have to go over and over certain parts of that first interview, but this is just part of it that I've gone over in detail, and I've just written things down that are either important, don't make sense, that I'm struggling trying to understand. I'm just going over key points, but those things about that I mentioned so far, so many logistical things that don't make sense, so many things in how Chris's speech patterns are that don't make sense, that he's not talking about with the girls. And I want to go back to that first interview, but just so many things. The distance that he's supposedly walking, doing all this. And why didn't those cadaver dogs, if this happened the way it did, why didn't those cadaver dogs pick up a scent on the stairs? Why didn't they pick up a scent in Shanann's bedroom? Why didn't they get this at all? I don't understand this. Did they test those garbage bags for the DNA? There are so many things we need, but apparently Coder and Tammy are getting the messages because they said, people said we need to look into this. People, if you have questions, if you feel there's more looking into, he said, that's the other thing, that she said on the 14th that she was going to go to stay with her friend Jim, and she didn't want to hear from him until this was finished. So supposedly she went with Jim. But anyway, guys, she didn't answer the phone call from the lawyer, multiple phone calls from the lawyer, but they didn't subpoena her. Did they? Did they have her served? Did they have, I don't know, guys. There's so many questions on this, but these are just a few of what I have as I go over this. Maybe you have some of the same concerns, maybe you have other concerns, and I'm just crawling over this and just trying to get through to this, just get through this all and try to figure it out, because there's too many holes in this whole entire thing. It's crazy. But I'm going to go to bed now. I will talk to you tomorrow. Party time today, tomorrow. We'll get it done. I want to get this video up. I want to get it premiered. I want to try to do that as early as possible. We'll see. I have to edit it and upload it. I'll talk to you later. Okay, guys. Bye-bye now.